everyone. My name is Jaleel Sobers, and I am here with Texas A&M assistant coach Jamie McNeilly. Jamie McNeilly is from Toronto, Scarborough, to be more specific. And a question that I like to start my interviews with is, who is Jamie McNeilly?
Well, to preface who I am, I'd like to add to the intro saying, not only Toronto, not only Scarborough, but Malvern and Brennanway. And we have a few ties.
Yeah.
How far you'd say we grew up next to each other? About a 2-minute walk, you'd say?
Yeah.
Yeah, so pretty cool to see everything you're doing and your love for the game and your passion. You remind me of, or I think you will become the basketball Nardwar. You know Nardwar, the show?
Yeah.
And he's quirky, not that part, but just the part where your brain works different, you know, like you think about it different, the stats you post, the questions you ask. So I'm just excited to see you keep kind of going. And, you know, it's like you're one of our community's younger bros, like, you know, your older bro and I grew up together, and obviously we might talk about that a little more. But no, just happy to see everything you've done as far as how you've matured around the game. You weren't an elite basketball player, but you figure out a way to kind of insert yourself into the game, and your ties to the basketball community are just as strong or stronger than anyone else. And it's proven with just in the few interviews you've done, the caliber of people that you're getting. So I'd like to give a sincere shout out to you for that, man.
Thank you so much.
And to answer your question, just my parents came from Trinidad. Grew up in Malvern, took to sports when I was young, kind of started to excel at basketball. And kind of that led to my career path, but more or less just someone that grew up around music, basketball, and Caribbean culture. That's just trying to make it a little easier for our kids to kind of make a path if they choose a similar route. So hopefully all the work I put in and all the satisfaction we get from winning games and coaching at the highest level is great. But that whole piece where we're just seeing people from literally the street you and I grew up on that are much younger, that understand the landscape of basketball and are navigating it a little easier because of the things that you and I are currently doing. So I hope that is a good enough answer of who I am, but yeah, more or less that's who I'd say I am in a nutshell. And with if I don't say it, I'll kill myself after. And obviously I'm a husband and father, and so my wife grew up not too far from us, and you've obviously known her most of your life as well.
Yeah.
I haven't gone to high school with your brother, with your brothers. I guess your other brother was in high school with us for a little bit too. But yeah, Shola's her name, and my two boys, Jaro and Juve, 3 and 1. And they're a part of that next generation of kids. You know, they're not from Toronto, but it's that same community. And so hopefully, you know, we get to see them kind of grow in the same community. So.
And how long have you been married for?
So I got married in 2014, but I've been with my wife since 2002, around 2002. So we've been together since right after high school, right toward the end of high school. And so the marriage date is it's not the full indicator of how long we've kind of been together and how long we've kind of lived that life of, you know, we're just kind of feeding off each other and building off of each other. So huge shout out to her, because she's the one that kind of lets me do what I do, because she takes care of everything else. So.
And when you first met her, did you like her when you first met her?
Well, so it was, so your brother and I we were in the basketball clique of guys in high school, whatever that would typically look like. And she was kind of on the athletic side with the female clique. And so there was just a lot of interaction between the groups. We always were cordial. We always were friends throughout high school. And it just, yeah, I mean, we took to each other fairly quick after we got a little more well acquainted. And it's just it's kind of cool that, you know, I get to share things with my wife that we did, I mean, when we were like 16, 17 years old, and she knows what I'm talking about, whether it's with her or not. And just those shared experiences from growing up in the same community it's priceless right now.
Right. Do you think that growing up in the same community has made you guys closer than if you were to marry a woman who was like from the US or a different country?
Culture and kind of the foundation you stand on, to me, is a huge part of who people are. And when we share those things, there's that bond is extremely strong, just because they those shared experiences, anytime there's any hard times or any kind of shared suffering, those are what we're going back to. You know, we grew up in a neighborhood, which suggests I probably shouldn't be here right now talking to you from the position I'm talking in. And so we've traveled so long together that, you know, we understand each other very well. But that foundation together, priceless. And I'd say, for sure, I think we're standing on firmer ground than probably the average relationship because of that shared foundation.
And what kind of husband are you?
I'd say I work at a rate that, that's a good question. I'd say I want to constantly improve, like I believe I have professionally, like I believe I have when I was a basketball player. So I'd say I'm an ever improving husband. I am not a super husband that can take care of everything and take care of everything in the home and the kids. I'm the furthest thing from that, but I listen to her when she talks. I try to listen to her when she talks. I try to apply the things that I think she wants me to apply relative to making our lives flow easier, because she's sacrificed, I mean, her profession, so many years of her life to help ensure that I'm in the position I'm in. So I'd say ever improving, or looking to be ever improving. And I think that's key, because the second I think I have it figured out is when 2 new hurdles pop up that I have no idea what I'm doing about relative to that relationship. So I think that's key for sure.
And you have 2 sons. So what type of father are you versus what type of husband you are?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm trying to spend as much time with them as possible. I'm trying to give them lessons that they probably can't handle yet, but pushing that envelope. I'm trying to have more fun with them than they know is possible. It's a weird balance, and it's kind of like swimming in uncharted waters. You know, you just kind of have to have your foundation of what you're going to do, or if you're sailing kind of and it's rough seas and you don't know where you're at, you just got to trust the foundation of kind of who you are and your ability to sail and kind of just navigate whatever comes. And I think that's what I try to be also as a father. I don't know how to be the best father ever, or if there's a blueprint, but I know that if I just kind of instill the values I have in them as best I can and spend as much time with them. And one thing that was told to me by a few people when I was kind of asking the questions you're asking is they kept saying, and I do agree, they notice everything and they're way smarter than we ever think. They understand so much more, and their ability to kind of mimic and mock what we do is uncanny. We don't possess that ability anymore. We had that ability when we were their age. So just kind of fostering that as best as I can.
And who are some people that taught you how to be a father?
Oh man, literally. And I mean, you know this from being in the community we grew up in. If you're Caribbean, if you're African, if you're Canadian, but your parents were probably not born in Canada, you were learning lessons from that person. And so uncles, aunts, my father, my older brother, just different people, you know, talking to your older brother, just everyone who kind of has is either in the same boat as me relative to, you know, you're trying to raise young kids, or any of the OGs, you know, where we grew up. And, you know, where we grew up, there's no shorter OGs. So just listening to them and kind of following suit, you know, knowing that I'm no smarter than them. They did it. And so they have that experience. So I better be listening and applying if I'm going to try to do this the right way. So, I mean, just countless people, too many to name for sure, but just people in my community, people in my family, and just any good examples out there, any posts, any YouTube videos, anything where it's like, oh, that looks like some good parenting. I'm constantly taking notes. And the other cool thing, Jaleel, is when we do recruiting calls and recruiting home visits, and I start to see an interaction or a dynamic between parents and a kid, I kind of stop recruiting the parents and start doing what you're doing and just asking them questions, you know, like, because I think I have a little bit of a cheat code. I get to walk into homes of the best athletes in the country, in the world, the best young basketball players in the world. I get to walk into their homes at certain times of the year and talk to them and learn from them and see the living rooms they grew up in. And so oftentimes I'd kind of stop the pitch for going to A&M or whatever school I was at in the past and kind of go, how did you guys get here? How come your son's so well-spoken? How come he's the number something ranked and he's a good person? And just kind of hearing those answers, like little things, like I have a trampoline, a little trampoline in my house. That was a recruit's parent that said, I'm not gonna lie, I think my kid jumped so high because he was on that trampoline all day and night. And that's a fun example, but that's a cheat code. You know, you don't get that unless you have those experiences. So I think that's kind of cool too.
Being from a Caribbean household and your wife being from an African household, is there anything that, as you guys became parents and spouses, that you're trying to unlearn from your upbringing? So, for instance, not hitting your kids or trying to speak to them more, or trying to spend time with them more?
Yeah, I think, and this is not for you and I to discuss, I think it's for sociologists to discuss, and I think it will be studied a lot. But what happened in Canada in the 70s and 80s is very unique relative to a nation like Canada kind of opening the borders like they did. And because of that, I think a result is, and I think all the Caribbeans from Toronto kind of understand what I'm saying, but there's a cultural gap between Caribbeans and Caribbean Canadians. And a lot of times growing up, they were speaking a different language to us. Sometimes literally, sometimes with a broken accent, it felt literally, but in their messaging, their way of life, it's just a different environment, different culture, different society. And they're raising us somewhere entirely new based off of those principles. And so we had a lot of kind of just fumbles. You and I both, just kind of our community, just in growing up, we don't know the ins and outs of athletics, of the academic process in Canada, raising kids in a society where some things that are acceptable back at their homes aren't acceptable here. And so I think we were kind of guinea pigs, you know. We were the first generation of Canadians in this new world. And I think we're taking everything our parents did for us. They literally dropped everything and went to a new place on the planet. I guess it's pretty incredible if you kind of think about it. And most of them started from nothing and kind of built what we have here. And so just taking those lessons as best as I can and applying it to my kids and the kids in our community, just like the same way we were parented by people in our community, we're parenting, you know, our next generation of kids. And we just have to keep the values we know we should keep relative to what our parents taught us, relative to our culture, and grow on the things that were not necessarily primitive, but just not how it's done right now. And I think that's a balance as well. So I mean, yeah, a big part of it is just finding that balance between how do our parents do it and how do we grow on how our parents did it, but still kind of keep that foundation of what they wanted to instill in us. So,
Do you have any regrets so far from how Is there any moment from parenting that you look back and say, man, I wish that I handled that differently? Or because your kids are so young, do you not think like that? Because they probably
Yeah,
won't.
I think for the most part, there are things that I'd look back in a few years and laugh at, but traumatized me, probably for no good reason. We went swimming the other day, and my 1-year-old loves water. So I plugged his nose and kind of got him ready and popped just under the water for a second and got right back up. And it looked like he hated me for the next maybe 4 hours. And I probably felt bad for about 2 or 3 days in a row. And obviously, even looking at it now, kind of silly, but it's like at that moment, nah, like he thinks I put him in danger, whether I did or not. That's what he thinks. And he doesn't trust me right now. It's like, whoa, that's my seed that doesn't trust me. And that's the first moment where it's like, I did something to portray, and it's like, no, I'm just trying to grow him, and he loves water, and this is the next step, and just a little dunk or whatever. But yeah, I would say things like that more so than anything. But right now, it's just a bunch of love, a bunch of play, a bunch of attention. And I think once I'm doing that, there's not really much room for regret, at least yet, in my opinion. So,
do you have any advice for fathers or fathers out there?
I'd say listening, and not even if your children are too young to talk, just listening to cues, listening to them. They're going to articulate things the way they know how. It's our job to listen and interpret. It's not their job to articulately tell us something or pick up a lesson quickly. It's our job to teach it better. And so just placing the blame on yourself for any temporary shortcomings relative to progress in their development, I think is huge. And then outside of that, I mean, they're your kids, man. Just rewind time. And when you were a kid, what did you want to do with your dad more than anything, or your mom? And do that, man. Do that as much as possible, and give that kid that experience, because that's really what parenting is. It's molding them and giving them an experience that, can kind of help them navigate the world, good and bad. And a huge part of that for parents, especially at this age, for our kids, is paying attention and just kind of listening for their cues.
Do you have any fears for your kids as they get older?
Do I have any, sorry?
Fears of what's going to happen to your children as they get older? Really?
There's a level of fear that, for a lack of a better analogy, when I'm parenting personally, I'm swimming in a pool of fear, trying to make it look like I'm not swimming in that pool. And so every step, every ouch, and my wife shows it, and that's how she kind of goes about dealing with it. And as soon as those moments happen, I try to suppress it and not show it, because I don't necessarily want them to see my reaction. But sometimes I can't control that, and so I'm in constant fear all the time. If they're not in my sight, if they're sleeping and they're sleeping too long, just anything that's as silly as can be. That's where I live, and you just gotta hide those fears. And when it's time to show those fears. But for the most part, it's just being a young, naive parent. And I think that's where a lot of my my fears come from.
And when you were being recruited, did you have any fears to leave the country at all?
I think because of how well my parents and my brother and his wife prepared me, I had very little responsibility in my house. My older brother, Jay, and his wife, Tammy, were like a second set of parents to me. So I really had like 4 parents growing up. And so when you have 4 parents growing up, and you're growing up in Malvern and you're a hooper, you got one job, and that's hoop every single day, as much as you can. And so I knew that they were setting me up to make sacrifices relative to not growing, like my whole adult life has not been around my boys, hasn't been around my family. It's just been something where, you're sacrificing that, you're giving that up so that, your family and kind of that next generation in your immediate circle have a little better way. And so fears, no, I was ready. I was preparing myself. I was excited. So I didn't, there were no fears. I was nervous. But I mean, I get nervous I got nervous before every game. I still do. Like, nerves are just a part of being a human. So I was nervous, fearful. No, I was more prepared and ready. And I think it was the good job that, those people guiding me, especially in my house, did, just kind of spending time with me and making me understand that, the sacrifice is coming, and your sacrifice will help us all. And you got to go down and get your degree and make the most of whatever that platform is to kind of get as far ahead as possible, so that, we could start kind of building something for our family. So I was on a mission. I wasn't fearful.
What was your recruiting journey like?
So like I was alluding to a few times, we had no real blueprint for how to do it. Coach Roe Russell, Coach Wayne Dawkins, a few other coaches, which Coach Roy Rana, different coaches coached me in high school and AAU. Obviously, my brother coached me in high school. But they all tried to help as much as possible. And in that climate at that time, there's just not enough knowledge and not enough exposure. And so I kind of fell victim to that a little bit. I heard you guys talking about scoring, and some of the guys I played with when you did your interview with Dawkins. I had 50 over 8 times in my career. I had 64 in a high school game. We won OFSA championships. I won OBA championships. Won big time tournaments. Like, just had a lot of success, stuff that if I was playing now, just with those numbers, I think my path would have been a little easier. But that gets you in 2001, that gets you a few looks. That gets you a couple D2s, a couple D1s. I don't really know about you, where you from. And I'm like, I could score 50, I think, whenever I want, in my head at that time. And that was the looks that we were getting. So I had a few offers, different levels, a couple that I don't think I really wanted to take. And out of high school, I actually committed to Furman in South Carolina. So after I committed to Furman, it's the summertime. I commit. It was summer after my senior year, so I was a late commit. And I'm doing all the paperwork, and I get a call from the head coach saying, we can't find your clearinghouse stuff in the eligibility center. And I said, the what in the where? And he said, your file with the eligibility center. And I'm like, well, I have no idea what you're talking about. I took my SAT, this is my score, and here are my grades. I don't know what you're talking about. And so I wasn't in the eligibility center. So we're fumbling, trying to get it all processed. Nothing's getting rushed for us, where nowadays these processes will get rushed for people that are kind of in that situation. And lo and behold, the fall comes, I get another call saying, hey, if you're not in the eligibility center, you can't come on campus. Like, you're not, like, I'm gonna have to take the scholarship away. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, I sent everything in, and they're sending it back, and one of your geology classes are being counted as a non-elective, just stuff that is just like, man, if I was dealing with this a year and a half ago, I'd already be down in South Carolina going to school. And so ruled ineligible. I go back, and this is your brother's senior year at our high school. And I have a year. Yeah, his post-grad year. And I'm back there for a 6th year, just kind of training. To be honest, probably not getting into some of the best things ever relative to just finding a way to kind of just get by that year. And I was kind of over basketball, to be honest. And Roe Russell calls me up and he gets a lot of flack from a lot of Canadians, but I'm a living testament to the work he's put in and the opportunities he's given young people from our community. So I'm forever indebted to him and forever grateful, and will forever help him any way I can. He calls me up and he says, "Hey, there's a junior college." Let me backtrack. He calls up Okaloosa Walton, one of the best junior colleges in the country. And the coach goes, "I can't take a kid from Canada that I don't know at one of the best junior colleges, but I need a point guard. Like, there's another guard I'm going to take, blah, blah, blah," whatever conversation they have. Then he calls him back and goes, "But there's a junior college in Americus, Georgia, that has just opened up a couple of years ago, and they'll take anybody. They just need a team." And so that's not how Coach Rowe told it to me. That's kind of how I figured it out when I got down there. But nevertheless, he gave me an opportunity. We drive down, my mom, my dad, my brother, his wife. We drive down 18 hours from Toronto to Americus, Georgia. I get to the place where they're dropping off my bags. I open the door. It's a JUCO dorm room. It's what you think a JUCO dorm room is. And I go to the windows and I kind of open up the windows. And as far as your eye could see, cotton fields. And growing up where we grew up, cotton fields throws you off, right? Like if we don't see cotton fields, I mean, unless we're traveling somewhere, and to know that that's your home, and where it takes you mentally, kind of, you know, during some days, or, you know, you're just kind of in a certain mood and you're like, cotton fields. Are you serious? In the deep South? Is that where I'm at right now? And the first thing that coach told me was, and I love Coach Wade. Coach Wade is one of the best coaches I ever coached me, man. What a good coach. He said, "Man, you better be good. I know our program's new, but if you're not, I'm going to ship your ass home. And I'm telling you that right in front of your parents." And I looked at him and kind of chuckled. I was like,
He'd never even seen you play.
Never seen me play. This is off the word of the head coach at Okaloosa Walton, which is off the word of.
He never saw you play either, right?
That's exactly right. And which is exactly, and that's off the word of Coach Rowe. That's the power Coach Rowe had at that time, right? And it didn't get me at O-Dub. I wanted to go to Okaloosa Walton, man. I wanted to go there. Like, when I heard that, I was like, okay, I can put in some work and get to a high major school or get somewhere where I could play. But when that coach at that junior college told me that, I kind of looked at my parents, looked at him and kind of chuckled, and he's like, "No, I'm serious." And I kind of looked at him and go, "You won't send me home." Like, I know I'm not that bad. Like, but I probably should have had a better line at the time, but I'm like, "You're not sending me home." And so fast forward a little bit, all conference in the year I was at JUCO, started every game. We took an unknown new junior college. We were ranked most of the year. We played Okaloosa Walton at Okaloosa Walton. We beat them at their place. Our coach goes into the locker room after the game. We're hyped, but we're also a bunch of dudes that probably shouldn't be together at a school that no one has ever heard of, for sure, especially a junior college. And he starts going crazy. And we're like, "Well, yeah, a good win." But like, he's going crazy. He's like, "No, you guys don't understand what happened. Okaloosa Walton has won 81 games in a row at home. And I didn't tell you guys this before the game because I knew it would mess you guys up." And back then, there's no internet, Twitter. Like, we don't know, right? We're just like, whatever we're playing O-Dub, and whatever their roster says on that sheet, that's all you know about that team. You don't know the history, but you know it's a really good program. And so that was one of the highlight wins that junior college year. And I had a few pretty good offers, and a lot of schools kind of thinking I was coming back for a second JUCO year. Took a few visits, basically a school at every kind of level, a low major, mid major, a high major, and the kind of mid-level school that I was getting recruited to, because of the tie that assistant coach at the University of New Orleans had with Ro Russell. That's what got me the look. That's what made him come to Maracus, Georgia, and check me out a few practices in a game. And after the game, he's like, I'm not gonna lie to you. You're gonna come on our team and be one of the guys. Like that's what we're gonna recruit you as. You're not a player, like a regular player in our league. You're gonna be one of the better players in our league. And I was just kind of listening to what he was saying, and it kind of just made sense. And remember, I'm on that mission, right? I'm not really trying to go somewhere and have a great college experience and enjoy it. I want to go somewhere that gives me the best opportunity to just be successful in whatever capacity. And he was just speaking that language to me. And so kind of just made that decision to go to New Orleans after that year at JUCO, which I got a few calls from a few angry coaches from a few schools at some higher levels that just were like, yo, if you were a one-year junior college player, that would have changed everything. But we didn't know that. Back then, you don't have the internet saying, you know, here he's a full qualifier out of junior college. It's just things that, the little things, you know, that's available now that would have made a huge difference. If 3 of my 50-point games were recorded on tape, if 3 of my, thanks, if 3 of my 50-point games were recorded on tape, and I had a mixtape and they saw my dunk off the lob, and you know, like just things, and I mean, you saw the games, your bro saw the games, like there were things that we were doing that if we had the resources now, and even asked with the Wayne Dawkins and the Ro Russells, we would have had better opportunities, you know, not necessarily I would have been a pro or nothing crazy like that, but just the opportunity to become one, it was a little harder to navigate back then, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I spoke to Juan Mendez, and he said that if he was playing today, then he'd definitely be in the NBA. And like, there's no.
Juan Mendez would be a NBA player if he played today. I will firmly back that up, no doubt about it.
He was just born a little bit too early. Which is very unfortunate. Do you think that players today know how hard it was to be recruited back then, and how lucky they are, and that they might not be the best? Because I hear a lot of Canadian NBA players say that they're the best Canadian high school player, or they're the best Canadian ever. But do you think they understand that they were just standing on the shoulders of giants, and that they're not really as good as they are? They just have more opportunities?
Yeah. If you rewind time and you go to the mid-90s, and you got to see Marvin Spencer, Phil Dixon, a little later, Mike Schmidt, Wayne Smith, you get to see some of these guys, older David Joseph. You understand, even I got to see Wayne Dawkins a little bit play, when I was real young, but I got to see him play. You quickly realize that it's way bigger than what's going on right now. And that'll never be the story. The story will never be those guys that I grew up watching and our generation. It's always going to be the younger generation. But that's kind of what we were fighting for, right? Phil Dixon wasn't trying to become an NBA Hall of Famer. He was, and he didn't know it at the time, but he was trying to let Jamal Murray be a future Hall of Famer. Like Phil, no Jamal. That's bottom line. And all credit goes to Jamal and his family. And but they paved the road, you know. They paved the road that we're driving on. And to answer your question, it's kind of like us and our parents. When we were growing up and when we were the age of these kids now, we had no idea what that sacrifice meant. But to hear my mom, who never made it to middle school, literally came up with literally nothing and has raised and helped raise all of us, like, you know, and your parents, the very same. Like, you know, if I would walk over to your house or Kaylin's house, who lived right next door to you, and one of your parents said something to you, if your mom said something to me growing up, Jaleel, I'm listening, right? Like, Like my mom said it to me, like, what are you guys doing out here? It's getting late, time to go home. And that's just like, you know, my mom saying go home. But we didn't understand that sacrifice until we got a little older, right? And so I think as this generation grows, and let's give them time to kind of, let's enjoy them. First of all, let's enjoy how good they are, because these young Canadians are amazing to watch and look at. And then let's give them time to start in some of these interviews and some of these times where they can. Let's give them a little time to start paying homage to the older generation. But then let's teach them too, right? And so how many talks have I had with Nikhil about former players out of Toronto that he doesn't know? Ask him. A lot, like, you know, and to me, that's important. And same thing with Cashius and Emmanuel Miller that, you know, is playing for us now. They know Jamie or Uncle Jamie or Coach Jamie is coming with history lessons. And the reason I do that is when I see Dwayne Dawkins drive the lane and his head is above the rim as he's dunking the ball, and I just dunked on someone in a high school game and I'm thinking I'm the first Canadian to ever dunk on someone. Like, no, it doesn't make sense, right? You're just trying to do what Wayne did. You're just trying to do what Phil Dixon did, what all these guys that were kind of a little older than did. When you see the first time, and ask any old heads, the first time you see Mike Schmidt come off a down screen, turn his hips, get square, and you see that picture perfect rise and release, and you're like, whoa, this guy almost looks like Ray Allen as he catches and shoots. Like, how come he wasn't a 3-contract NBA player? Like, look at him play. This guy's a pro. When you see Dwayne Cross play in men's leagues in the late 90s, and you see 6'7" with arms down to his calves that can literally palm the ball and looks Jordan-esque as he's driving the lane, navigating around to get layup. No one's doing that now. Obviously, Magloire transcended all of that. And I think you and I and anybody that comes from where you and I come from, he's on our Mount Rushmore, not basketball Mount Rushmore. He's on the Caribbean Canadian, the Afro-Canadian Mount Rushmore, because what him and his coach, Simeon Mars, did for Canada basketball transcends anything else. And you're talking to a coach who coached the team that won the first world championship in Canadian history. And what I'm saying is what Jamal Magloire and Simeon Mars did at Eastern Commerce transcends our world championship, transcends the Raptors championship. That doesn't happen unless these guys are creating the path for us to follow to excel. It's hard to convey that within our community because a lot of the people that are doing what you're doing right now don't have the tie to the roots, right? They're a part of the group that jumped on when basketball became popular. And I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think it does paint a good picture. My mom and dad and our parents, the first Carabanas, I don't know if you know about it, but they weren't on the lake shore. They weren't as long as they were in, I can't even remember the route, and I should have the route memorized, but it was a back street route that went about a half a mile, and they're pushing big steel pans, and it's only steel pans. And if you're playing mass, it's because you made your costume, right? Now we're getting over 1 million tourists, and every artist from every single part of the world is coming to Toronto based off of our Caribbean and Afro parents that were pushing steel pans down the street for 2 blocks. You know what I'm saying? And so does Drake know that? You know, does Cardinal Official know that? I don't know the young guys. Weekend or these guys, do they know that? I don't know. But without our parents pushing those steel pans, Carabana doesn't become what it does. And the Caribbean culture doesn't have the impact it does in Toronto. And we know where we're at musically and athletically without that African or Caribbean culture infused into what we're doing. And so that's something that you and I should be proud of. You know, we are a part of the unsung foundation, and we can celebrate. Like when we see Shay, Nikhil, Andrew, Jamal, Lugans, all these guys, the smile we have on our face isn't, look how good that kid is. We know that kid's good. The smile we have is, nah, Jamino Sobers was dunking on guys left, right, and center a decade before you. And it's only because you got to see how Jamino was blocking every single shot in every single AAU tournament that when Wayne Dawkins sees Tristan, or when Ro Russell sees Tristan Thompson, he can compare him to Jamino. Hey man, you do this like, and I could coach you like this, and Jamino. And so that foundation, man, that's what we get to carry with us. You know, that's the kind of, when we see each other and we give each other hugs, and we're going to the Raptors game, and you know, it's two players I coached and a player that you've interviewed because of our ties, and it's just like, that's why we're doing this, and we're showing the world what our parents started by saying, I'm going to leave what we did and start something new in a country I don't know, and now kind of look at our culture and then look at us athletically. So I know it's a kind of a tangent, Jaleel, but I think that's important to say, man.
And I want to give you some credit for also being, Malvern is such an interesting place because my brother went Division I, and then Kaylin, who lived next door, went Division I, and you went Division I. And then I found out that all these other people who moved out of Malvern to like Brampton, like Patrick Tatum, I heard he lived in Malvern.
That's right.
He went Division I.
Yeah.
And it's
Javon
just like,
Shepard, just Malvern.
That's unheard of back then, because the amount of Division I players was so little, and then to get this concentration of Division I players from this like little
within an arm's reach. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's incredible. And then to see how far you went in basketball, and then Patrick, how far he went, and both coaching now and impacting the lives of people who look like you and who come from where you come from, is just incredible. And just don't leave yourself out of that group of people.
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate that, Jaleel. And that's the beauty of it, man. That my goal is to just be a part of it, right? Like I never want to be revered as, oh, you know, he's kind of made it to the highest level in Division I, and no other Canadian assistant or Canadian NCAA coach has coached as long as he has, and the world champion, blah, blah. Yeah, great. I love those accolades. That's pretty cool to look back and kind of see. But I mean, I want to see your daughter play Division I basketball, if that's the way it's going. And I want to be as intertwined to where we're all going down for the first game, or we're all going to that NCAA tournament. That's really why we're doing this. We're just pouring into the culture so much that everyone that's a part of it just reaps rewards and reaps benefits. And then they learn that, oh, it's because so many people poured in, and then we got to do the same. So no, I appreciate that, Jaleel. And that's the goal, man. What you're saying is the goal, just to be a part of it, man, which is what you and I have done our whole lives. So
when you were in high school, you played against and with a lot of, well, in my opinion, like they're really, really like great players. Antwi and Denham and my brother, who is a player that should have went further, but they just didn't because of something beyond their control. Like something like you, how your papers didn't end up in the clearinghouse.
Man, like I want to just go through the list and say every single one of us that was kind of in, because we're kind of in this weird kind of, basketball was starting to get notoriety, but we were kind of that last group that weren't on the front page, right? We were that last crop of kids before the kind of Andrew Wiggins kind of players came out. So, I mean, man, there are so many good players that missed so many
Neil
opportunities.
Davis got a lot of attention when you're in high school as somebody who can make it to the NBA.
Who's that?
Theo Davis.
Yeah, he was up there. He was like of the mold of like a Tristan Thompson-esque, and could have kind of became that. I alluded to it before, and I mean this as respectfully as possible. Dwayne Cross is a little before me, but he should have been an NBA player. Just seeing him and playing against him for so many years. And then there are certain players that I don't know if they should be or should have been in the NBA or not, but they're, because of the lack of opportunity and the lack of notoriety. Steve Morrison was unbelievable, went to Bathurst a little bit before me. Tristan Martin was an unbelievable athlete. You know what? A little after me, and I ended up coaching him when I was young. Junior Cadogan, the best leader, point guard I've ever been around. Should have been an NBA player. Maybe his stature and how when you look at him, you don't see what he is, and he doesn't look bad. Like he's a heavy build point guard, but that just isn't popular in the NBA. And because that type isn't popular, I think that hurt him a lot. But he's for sure one.
Do you think if you came along now, then people would say he's like Kyrie Irving or Kyle Lowry?
For sure. You remember he was compared a lot to, remember the UConn guard Khalid El-Amin.
Yeah.
He was compared to guys like that, and I think there are a few more examples now that would have made it a little more okay. But coming off a ball screen, oh my goodness! Like for a guy like, and Junior didn't have the tightest handle, so like he wasn't like a 3 or 4 baby dribbles in between while he's splitting the screen type of guy. But he would just put the ball to a space and get there and make a great play right after he got there. And it's just fun to watch, man. One of the most fun players I've ever coached, and good people I've ever coached. But I'm sure I'll think of like 30 names right after we get off. But those were a handful of names where it's just like, man, these guys had a little more opportunity. They could have kind of snuck through, I think. So.
And growing up in Toronto and then traveling down to Georgia and then going to Louisiana, and then you played overseas, correct?
Yeah, in Germany for one season.
How much racism did you experience in all those places, if any? Because I don't know if you did or not.
So obviously we grew up in Malvern, and to paint that picture as quickly as possible, it's as multicultural as you can get it. I tell people in the States, I grew up in a pocket of the city, and there's a lot of pockets like it, where it's Caribbeans, it's Africans, it's Filipinos, it's Indians, it's Sri Lankans, maybe a couple, went to high school with maybe a couple white people in my class, maybe 2 or 3. And so that was just our environment. Georgia, it's quite literally black or white. New Orleans, very much so, in my opinion, a black city, but black and white. Germany, obviously what we think Germany is relative to the construct racially. Milwaukee, Virginia, and now College Station were the other 3 places I've lived. And all of those places pretty much black and white. So I go from not being the visible minority my whole life to my whole adult life, college into adult life, being the visible minority for the most part. And so just understanding the change and understanding that you're going to get looks, not at any one of those places I get, but you're going to walk in and you're going to be different, and they're going to look at you weird. And you're going to walk into homes, and because of how you look, they're not going to expect you to talk how you talk. And that's going to throw them off, and that's going to upset me. But that's what I'm going to have to what I did have to kind of learn how to work through. And so it's there every step of the way, just like it was there when we were in Malvern, just a little less prevalent because there was a lot more people that kind of looked like us growing up. And like in varying degrees. And I'd say the hardest part to deal with is when you walk in front, or when you're in front of a group of people that don't look like you and that are the majority, and you're asked to perform a task, whether it's to speak in front of them, whether it's to persuade them. And we're talking obviously about within the basketball athletics profession. That's daunting. That's daunting when the people that look like you make up 13%. And you know, everyone else, they don't look like you. And for a fraction of that, everyone else, they're expecting a different type of performance out of me because of how I look relative to a conversation, how I play, how I coach. They have a vivid expectation because of the narrative the racial narrative that has surrounded athletics. You know, Black coaches recruit. Black coaches don't do X's and O's. Black coaches, they get to know the players. Black coaches, they don't communicate well with white admin. Just stereotypes that are specifically around my profession. We deal with it. That's a part of it. Are the people I work with at Texas A&M racist? Absolutely not. Are the people around Texas A&M, have they treated me in a way where I feel less than them because of my race? No, absolutely not. Is it here just like it was in Virginia, just like it was in Milwaukee, just like it is in Toronto? We can't trick ourselves. It's there, it's everywhere. And every time you walk into a room or there's a new interaction, that better be on your mind, because that might be a hurdle that you have to immediately get around. And that's how you have to go into every interaction, just in this profession and being a minority in this profession.
So does it ever affect your mental health, having to think about that every single time you enter a new room to speak to a new group of people?
Absolutely. It can be emotionally draining. And when you're trying to think about basketball as a player, as a young coach, as a coach kind of in the middle of his career, or getting to the point where he's close to the middle of his career, it's draining, emotionally draining. And the thing I've definitely learned through all of this is, and it's a part of our culture, we think we're the tough, independent male Caribbeans, like that don't need help for nothing. And that's the furthest thing from the truth, especially when you're dealing with this thing, when you're dealing with these things. You need some sort of shared suffering. You need some sort of, yeah, I've been there and it's going to get better, or I've been there and I've managed. And so those are conversations with my wife. Those are conversations with my friends. Those are conversations with my staff members, with our players. It's almost daily where it's coming up, especially now. And if you think you're going to get through it by yourself, or it won't affect you mentally, you're probably already too late in dealing with it. And so it's just something that, it's just like almost like working out. You don't want to work out for 2 months and then stop for a month. You don't want to work out for a day and stop for 4 days. You kind of always, that has to be just a part of who you are. And so talking about race and dealing with any kind of struggles related to it, or even just frustrations that are building over time, that may not be, so-and-so called me the N-word. No, it may be just a look over the course of 2 years where it's like, no, I see the look and you're not giving that person the look and they say the same thing. And it's just like, well, if I start that confrontation, I'm that guy, right? And so without being that guy, how do you deal with it? Or is it time to be that guy? And so conversations, talking, and most importantly, what I've used to kind of help me with it is that understanding that I can't solve this. I can't fix this. I can't carry the weight of this. But I can manage and help as much as I can if I have people around me that are helping me mentally and making sure I'm strong enough and sharp enough to make the decisions and act appropriately relative to kind of what's going on or the situation I'm in.
Have you ever cracked under the pressure of handling so much about race?
Cracked under pressure, I don't know, but there have been various tipping points that look different. So there have been times where I kind of just want to shut off, and I do, and I don't need interaction. I just need everything in me to kind of calm down. There are times I screamed at people, yelled, got very animated, and all kind of within the construct of trying to deal with things as best I can, given the situation. And I think that's, yeah, I don't know if you talk to anyone that says, nah, I've never cracked. I've always been solid as a rock. Like maybe, and maybe they have, but I don't see it working that way for most people. And I'm definitely one of those people that, I go up, down, and good story, bad story, good interaction, bad. I'm on it. I'm on the roller coaster, and I'm choosing to insert myself into issues that matter for my kids. And, and that's going to be a part of it. So.
How important is it to speak to your kids about the men that they're going to grow up to be in the world that they're going to grow up to be in?
It has to be constant conversation. It has to be a part of their daily routine, and not overwhelming them and not making their life grim, but just an awareness. And the beauty of awareness is when you raise awareness, it's not always, it's whatever spin you need it to be, right? So it's not like, oh no, the bad guy's coming. Oh no, the bad guy's coming. No. Hey, we gotta lock the door just to be safe. And so what's the message? Bad guys are coming. Oh no, bad guys are, or hey, we gotta lock the door. Hey, we gotta wash our hands. Or are we saying the virus is coming, you're gonna get sick, don't get sick? And so how do we insert these lessons into their daily lives without overwhelming them, without making it seem grim, but constantly touching it? How do we make sure, how does your daughter grow up, and when she's our age, say, my parents and the people around me every day kept me aware of what's going on, and I'm not the head of the Black Panthers, I'm not vigilante, but you're not going to get over on me. You're not going to trick me. When I see certain things, I'm going to know what I'm seeing, and I'm not going to fall for the traps that you and I may have fell for, that we're trying to figure out ways to kind of get around now.
How much does your players' mental health matter in terms of a coach's, like when you guys meet as coaches, do you guys ever speak about how your players are doing mentally and emotionally?
Our players' mental health is literally the most important thing for us and our program. They know that, we know that, we over communicate that. We give them platforms to speak on whatever they want to speak on. If ever they want to act out in whatever way, we encourage them letting us know so we can help them, never stifle or muffle what they want to express, but always encourage it more. And Jaleel, to be honest with you, this is the separator in the NCAA, in college, in athletics, with just young people in general. There are, I would argue that the majority of coaches, I'm not talking about the NCAA, majority of coaches that are just coaching young men and women don't value mental health near what they should. This whole deal, it's so crazy. They tell us from the very beginning, athletics is literally, we use it to build character. What's character? Character is all like, your mental state, how you're acting. And so if we're saying sports build, that's the cliche, right? That's the sports cliche. Sports builds character. When I'm stuck in moments now, I refer back to how I got out of sticky situations on a basketball court, or what scouting report worked and what didn't work. What was my mental state going into this practice when I had the best practice ever? Should that be my mental state walking into this meeting right here? My wife and I speak about this all the time, and I think it's cool. We're working out right now. And at times, like some of her siblings will say like, Jamie, how do you like work out so hard? Or like, you know, like, yo, you never end. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, yeah, I don't really know. But when I think about it, it's like, I've been pushed past my limit so much in my life that when I want to push myself past my limit, I can do that now. But if Wayne Dawkins, Ro Russell, Buzz Williams, Chris Wade, Jay McNeilly, Roy Rana, all my coaches I've had don't push me past that limit daily in my life, then I don't have that tool. So when I'm doing the boot camp, I'll look like everyone else doing boot camp that never had my experiences. And so I think just drawing back or being able to draw back to those experiences is such a competitive advantage, in my opinion.
It's true. Never thought about that. Never thought about how like almost passing out in practices and everything like that can make you do more as you get older. Because I guess in the moment as a player and as a young player, you're just so caught up in trying not to throw up or just watching the clock waiting for it to end, that you don't think, well, later down the road, this is going to help me.
That's right. Like for example, my son has to look me in my eye when I call his name. And a coach taught me that, right? Like I like, you know, my parents, my mom's the best mom ever, like taught me everything. And the person I am is 100% because of her. But I didn't get that from her. I got that from a coach. And there's so many little things where it's like me and so my 3-year-old and I will have play practice. Like, you know, we'll set up the little net and it's like practice. We have the drills, and because he sees it and he calls me Coach Daddy. I never even asked him to do this. It's the cutest thing ever. My 3-year-old goes, only in practice, Coach Daddy, and then says whatever. Like, Coach Daddy, look at this. And so just little things I see him doing. It's unbelievable how further along he's going to be in his life. So like, for example, when I'm doing the boot camp and I rest, he says to me the things I say to him. Come on. He's like, come on, Daddy, you can do it. You just have to keep trying. And I'm like, well, that's exactly what I tell you. And I'm like, whoa, this is coaching. This isn't even parenting. And I'm kind of bleeding the two, you know? So I think that's kind of cool too.
When you meet a player, how can you tell that they're going to be successful under your system or Buzz Williams' system or your system as well?
It's not, to me, it's not when you meet them, it's when you get to know them. But I think you're alluding to that. It's getting to know the person, getting to know their parents, getting to know what drives them. And then we're good. How good they are and it sounds like a coaching cliche, but it's not. How good they are isn't near as important as who they are. And that's the whole deal. If I'm going to ask Jaleel Sobers to run through that wall head first 20 times in a row, and when I interact with you, you don't give me the impression that you're going to run through that wall head first 20 times when I ask you, well, then we're not going to recruit you. But you might be really good. You might be a top 20 player, shoot 40% three and blah, blah, blah. But we don't really win because our players are better than your players. We win because we're going to run head first through that wall, and every single player, every single manager, every single coach is going to do that every day. And the accumulation of the work we get done because of that is why we're successful. So that's what we need to figure out in our recruiting process. Whether you're good enough to play high major basketball in the SEC, 3 possessions, I don't know, how long would it take you, Jaleel, to see if a high school player can play, like, go back to when you were seeing Nikhil play high school or any player like that. How many up and downs would you have to see before you go, he's high major? Maybe less than a quarter, you'd say, right?
The funny thing about Nikhil is Shane took me to a practice of theirs when I got back from Windsor, when I was going to school in Windsor. And on the way back, he was driving me home and he said, who do you think is the best player in the gym? And then I said, whoever number 0 was. And he's like, that's Nikhil. But at that time, he thought that Jordan Henry was the best player. But I was like, nah, Nikhil's going to grow taller. He's going to shoot a lot better. He's going to be the best player that you coach in a few years. But I think they're all stuck on Jordan Henry at the time.
Yeah.
But Jordan Henry's a great player.
Yeah, for sure. That was the narrative at the time, and that was their opinions, as it should have been, because you're right, Jordan Henry was a good player. But I mean, like you're saying, it doesn't take you long to see that Nikhil, like okay, this guy's going to be a special talent. So that part's always easy for us. It doesn't take us much work. Are you high major or not? Okay, done. And now we're going to ask you to work harder than you've ever worked for a longer period of time than you think is capable. Are you going to be someone that's going to take to that, or someone that's going to reject that? And the pool of players that take to that are a fraction, a small fraction of the pool of all players. Because every player wants to be the I work hard, I do the 5 workouts in a day, Kobe Bryant. But by day 3, they know why Kobe's the separator, right? They know, okay, I can't feel my legs. I'm on workout number 2 and I'm done. I have no mental capacity to work as hard as I did the last 2 days. And they realize, oh, Kobe is like literally one of a kind. And now where do I fall on this spectrum of how bad do I want it? And most kids either don't realize how much work it takes to make it, or they fall into the category where I lost my thought, sorry. Where either they don't make it, or the kids, screw it, lost my thought on that. It's okay.
And when I was at a camp that you were counseling at in 2004, you kept yelling during a drill, college coaches think Canadians are lazy. Do college coaches still think that Canadian players are lazy? No, and it's crazy you bring that up. This is the Nardwuar stuff I'm talking about. I would never have remembered that, but no. To be honest, I think my generation helped that a little bit. And I think the narrative around Canadians has dramatically shifted. So I do not think that anymore. I did think that, and because that's what I would hear. And that was kind of the tag associated with Canada. Canada's soft. And that was the tag the Dawkins of the world, the Roe Russells of the world were trying to break by showing the world these inner city Black kids that couldn't be further from soft. And so, yeah, I don't think that that's true anymore. I don't think that that's the narrative. Are there soft Canadians? Of course. But I think the rate at which we're producing soft basketball players is no greater than anywhere else in the world. And you said by day 2, the player working out realizes where they fall on the spectrum and how hard they have to work to make it. How hard do you have to work to make it to the NBA? Because you coached Jimmy Butler, who was the 30th overall pick, and Nikhil, who was the 18th pick. And hopefully Nikhil's career turns out like Jimmy Butler's career. But how hard did you see those 2 players work? Oh, and Jay Crowder as well, and Vanderblue, and all these players. How hard did you see those players work to make it to where they are? Yeah. And so, because every player is different, because every player's starting point's different, because what they need to make it is always different, the consistent thing I've seen was the competitiveness. So I'd say in just Division I coaching in college, I think there's been 14 players I've coached in college that have played in NBA, and then obviously with the national team, however many. But the competitiveness above all else, and that's always kind of the first separator. The first separator is no matter the drill, no matter what we're doing, is this the guy that just wants to win? No matter what, I'm going to win this. And those guys have this figure it outness that make them make it. And it's not necessarily are they talented enough, but just they figure it out. If it's talent missing, I'm gonna make it up. If it's my mental capacity, I'm gonna increase my mental capacity. If it's something physical,
I'm going to work on that as well. I remember when I coached Wes Matthews, who is in the second round of the playoffs now. I remember him going undrafted, and we used to have breakfast every day by a place called the Broken Yoke in Milwaukee, best breakfast spot in Milwaukee.
That's what Jay said too. Jay loves that place.
Yeah, and trust, the owners are the best, and it's amazing. They give you a lot of food. Be prepared. But we used to go there and eat breakfast a lot, and I remember him not being worried, and that being so weird because he was so confident he was going to be an NBA player. And I'm like, yo, you did not get drafted. Not in the second round. You didn't get drafted. He goes on that year to be the highest paid rookie because he's undrafted. And at the Broken Yoke, this story's true, Jaleel. I kid you not. This was one of those cool coaching moments. We're sitting down eating breakfast, me, him, and Trent Blackledge, who was a good player, who's overseas. I think he's still overseas. He tells us that he got the call. We're eating at the Broken Yoke. And so we're going crazy. And he goes, no, guys, not to like come out and like none of that. Like, I got a contract. And we're like, what? This is before Twitter came out with it. And he literally goes into his bag and I get to see my first like NBA rookie contract like that, you know, and he had his signature on it and everything. And he's like, yeah, I faxed it in this morning. And it was he taught us a lot about it. It was a front loaded contract. It was just the structure of it. I learned so much, but I told him this many times. We were actually in I think it's a Audi R8 or something. He came back, he was into cars for a little bit, obviously with all that money. And I told him while we were in that car, I was like, yo, your confidence that you were going to make it was like nothing I've ever seen, because I was so sure that you didn't make it. That, you know, like I thought it was over. And he would talk to me like this. He'd go, yo, Jamie, this is after he didn't get drafted. Yo, Jamie, yo, I'm gonna take care of you still, man. Like, you my guy, man. I know you like Jays. I'm gonna send some Jays. I'm like, Wes, like, I appreciate it, but you're probably going overseas. I don't know what you're talking about. And so, really, really cool story. But and even in how he was talking to me, he knew he was gonna make it. Like, but it wasn't like he worked, you know what I'm saying? He put in the work, but that confidence. And so that competitiveness and the confidence, separators in all regard. Another guy that was like that a lot was Jay, as far as his competitiveness. His competitiveness was through the roof. Nikhil, if he lost a drill, he'd almost need a counseling session. If he lost a drill, like, you know, in the middle of practice. And so I think that is a separator more so than can he pass, dribble, or shoot, or what role he'll play.
Yeah, the amount of times I've been around Nikhil, he's very emotional about the game of basketball. He like really takes it really, really seriously, and that's what I respect about him a lot. I remember in a film session one time, he almost started to cry because they had lost, and like rewatching it, I guess it just brought up feelings, and he just played his heart out, but they still lost. Yeah,
Nikhil's a guy that watches a lot of film, and this is a tendency of his in film. This gives you a picture of what you're saying. Anytime we're watching a clip and we're watching his clips, and it's just like him and I going over a game or a team film session, whatever it is. Every time he does something, this is how he looks visually. This is Nikhil. This is him watching himself. The whole time. It's like, Nikhil, that's what you do when you're a kid playing video games, but that's where his head is. His head is, did I get it? Did I make it? Like, you know what I'm saying? He can't hold himself still. And I never brought that up with him because I didn't want it to become superficial, because it was real, like, it was innate in him. Like, he wasn't like trying to show off or nothing. He'd try to hide it a little bit. He'd start by that and then kind of get back to normal. Yeah. And so just like, you see things like that and you're like, okay, you know, he has to produce, he has to prove it, but it's there. The tools are there.
And with Jimmy Butler, stories about how competitive and how hard he works have been going around for years now. Did you see that when he was at Marquette?
Yeah, there's a lot of stories I can't tell that I hope he comes out with a book and tells them, because his competitiveness. You coach. There's, I guess, dozens of NBA players at some point between the national team and in college. And when there's the one that separates himself, you have the one, whoever it is. Like, the guy who coached Damian Lillard, that's his one. The guy who coached Jimmy Butler, that's his one. Like, and so Jimmy this is the mildest one that gives you a sense. Jimmy would come to my office. So the second year I coached him, I was the video coordinator. And so he'd come to my office and every day at lunch, and he'd eat the same thing. It's a 12-inch sub. Subway is the closest thing to the office at the Al McGuire Center at Marquette. And he'll walk into my office and he'll say the same thing every day. What we got today, and every day he'd eat lunch. I'd set up a laptop, and sometimes I'd watch it with him, but for the most time I was doing my work. But I'd already have everything clipped out and typed up that I wanted him to see. And he'd watch film every single day at lunch, every day. And so we're getting ready to play UConn at UConn. It's the year they're like 8-8 in the Big East, but they go on to win the national championship. You remember when they kind of ran off all the games in the championship? Yeah, and then went on to win that, right. So that year, we're playing them at their place. And going into the game the 2 days before, I have Jeremy Lamb set up for him, right? That's going to be his matchup probably. And so I go, Lamb set up for you. It's just going to be today. All of his perimeter makes. Tomorrow we're going to go over his inside makes. So just every perimeter make and blah, 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 watch him. He starts watching. He looks at me and goes, no, I want to watch Kemba. I'm like, well, we have two other pros. Like, they're not pros at the time, but two other pros that are going to guard Kemba. Like, we have really good players that are quicker than you, that can guard like you, that are going to guard Kemba, is how I was explaining to him. Yeah, I got you. I just want to watch Kemba. All right, cool. Pulled up Kemba. The next day, pulled up Kemba. I said, yo, you sure? I'll send you the Lamb stuff. Or like, he's like, yeah, I'll watch that too, but I just want to watch Kemba. I'm the video guy, coordinator, right? I'm not the associate head coach like I am here, where I could make calls and do this, and I'm the video guy. And so it's halftime of the game, and we're not doing very well. But the rhythm of the game, Kemba has the game. It's at UConn. We don't know that they're going to win a national championship that year, but they're really good. And 8-8 or whatever they were in our league, the old Big East, like, come on, like 8-8 is like, you could win the national championship like they did. And so at halftime, on the way in, he elbows me. Like, we used to sit next to each other when he was off, because he'd just like, all right, Jamie, what I got? And just kind of sit by me. And then, bro, you sucked at this. You were good at this. And then that's kind of how we went about the games. So elbowed me and goes, yo, Kemba. And I'm like, come on, man. Like, don't come with this right now, because I don't want to go to the coaches with this right now. Like, I'm not confident enough, like, to bet on you to buzz right now for guarding Kemba Walker. And bothering me on the way, and 2 or 3 elbows. We're talking about it. And like, it wasn't no real argument. He was just kind of like, come on, man, this, like, trust me this time. Trust me. I was like, all right, it's my dog. Whatever. I'll trust you. Go to Buzz. Buzz, Jimmy wants to guard Kemba. What? No, whatever. Coach, Jimmy's been watching Kemba footage this whole week. He knows Kemba better than anybody else. We should at least just try it. Guarded Kemba the whole second half, won the game. He hits the game winner. If you want to splice and edit over the top of him hitting the game winner, I'll send that clip to you. What a game. What an experience. Jimmy became Jimmy, I think. And that was one of those first moments where we knew who he was and we knew how competitive he was. But that was one of the first moments when I seen what he did guarding Kemba, where I'm like, well, he can guard anybody in the country. And so that's when I knew he was at least an NBA defender.
One time you told me that I asked you how you recruit players, and then you used the analogy about how a guy finds the right girl, and how there's loads of girls out there, but you just narrow it down to one. When you recruited for the Big East in 2011, it was a different type of basketball, but you guys have the same core of coaches. Do you guys recruit the same type of players in 2020 versus how you did it in 2010?
Yeah, good question. It's much more refined, so we're a lot more calculated with what we're looking for. But yeah, our phrasing is an OKG. That's what we call them, OKG, our kinda guy. And so an OKG started literally when we were in Marquette, and it was just the guys that, I mean, we had success right away at Marquette, even when our seniors left and, oh, can Buzz do it without the team he had, and Sweet 16, and just kind of, it just blew up kind of from there. Ever since, OKG, who's the next Jimmy? Who's the next Jay? Who's the next Jameel Wilson? Who's the next Wes Matthews? Who's the next Jarrell McNeil, Dominique James? Like, just who are the guys that were our kind of guys relative to this is how we work every day. So that has not changed. We don't cast as big of a net anymore because I would rather to get to know the recruit version of Jaleel Sobers over 7 conversations like this than to have 7 different conversations with 7 different Jaleels and trying to figure out between those one conversations which one will put his head through that wall. It's kind of harder to do that. So we have to recruit a little less, but the intention's a lot more refined, if that kind of answers your question.
And having come from junior college and Jimmy Butler coming from junior college, do you recruit a lot of players from junior college?
Yeah, every year our staff has had at least one player from junior college. We've coached more players we've coached more players that have went on to the NBA from junior college than any other staff. In the second round of the playoffs, there's 4 junior college players left. 2 of the 4 have been coached by us, and they're starters. We know JUCO. Coach Buzz went to JUCO. I went to JUCO. Our other assistant went to JUCO. We understand what it takes for a junior college player to make it. When you open that curtain and you see what I saw at my first day at a junior college, we know what that feels like, right? And that's a different place to go to than I was revered as a high school player. Everyone loved me. I'm recruited by 20 schools, everything like, that kind of just, I'm going to be all right. No, when you come from JUCO, nothing's all right. Like, you entered that JUCO because everything was going wrong. And that mentality, look at Jimmy when he plays. Look at Jay Crowder when he plays. You can see them playing like, yo, at some point in my career, like, everything was wrong. And if I didn't act the way I'm acting right now, I couldn't make it right. And I think that is priceless. That's why we'll continue to have junior college player. I'd say every year we're together.
And when you go on to do you want to go on to become a head coach of your own program?
If the cards play out right, if it's the right situation, my whole thing with that, Jaleel, is if the situation's right and there's opportunity for growth, I'll always take it, right? And so and I hope that that's every professional. But I also want to grow, continue to grow where I'm at. And I was afforded that ability for working for Coach Buzz, which most head coaches at this level don't give up major responsibilities with as much confidence as Coach Buzz does, which is probably the biggest factor in my maturation as a professional.
How much goes in before a player is offered a scholarship? Because what I imagine is you guys have I might be totally wrong. You guys have like a list of players who you're going to recruit, and then you go out and see them, and then you visit them at home, and then you invite them to the campus. How much does that list dwindle down as the season goes on or the years go on?
Yeah, so if we take it back to the like courting when you're dating analogy, if you were hypothetically talking to 3 different women at the same time, and you're trying to figure out which one should you date, asking them to go on a date with you kind of depends on your interaction with all 3, right? And so it's just different guidelines, different scenarios, and we just have to treat each scenario like that. I can't get confused, and when I'm trying to court female number 1, do the exact same thing as if I'm trying to court female number 2. Female number 2 is going to look at me like I'm crazy, because she's different, right? She's a different person. We have different interactions. That's how we treat offering players. Every interaction is different. Every kid will need or require an offer at a different point. There's been kids, so many kids that have signed with us that we never offered. Like it just got to a point in time where they know it's the right decision. We know it's the right decision. And, you know, one of us just kind of like, hey, let's bypass this stuff and just come on, man. Like, you know, you're one of us. Just come on. Like, we don't need to offer you and wait another month and do this. And so here's a great example. Jimmy Butler did not visit Marquette before he signed with us, right? Jimmy Butler sent us his NLI, what he signs, at a McDonald's, from a McDonald's fax machine. That's actual hard facts. Like, you might be able, Jimmy, I haven't read it, but for sure Jimmy has had to say it because it's that crazy, but never visited and never even, like, it wasn't like his high school sent it, the NLI. He had to walk to a McDonald's and ask them, hey, can I use your fax machine? I'm about to sign scholarship papers. And you know, like, that's kind of his route. And so we've had, and Coach Buzz brings that story up all the time because we've had so many other players do that. Jimmy wasn't being recruited by a lot of schools. One of his teammates were coming with us, and his teammates was describing to him the process. And we needed an extra scholarship player. We had 1 scholarship left. And Jimmy was a kind of sort of like a throw-in, like, you know, like, we wanted his teammate, which his teammate was really good. And he's actually on our staff right now at A&M. And his teammate kind of vouched for him to come. And that was the big recruiting process for Jimmy, right? Like, that, it wasn't the fight for 4 different schools and recruit him and home visit. And we finally got it. No one wanted this kid, man. And he was 6'6", and he wasn't very skilled. But when you talk to him and you're trying to figure out, would he throw his head through that wall for you? You quickly say, no, we're not even playing that game. Of course he'll do that. He'll do it with 2 of his teammates running beside him, holding them. Like, you know, and it's like, oh, like, duh, come on, you're with us. And so he wasn't ranked, right? He was ranked so low in the state of Texas that the person ranked 1 spot ahead of him in the state of Texas went to a Division III school. And that's a fact as well. And that's a fact he told me when we were at Marquette. And like, that, yeah, of course you're gonna have an edge if you got your opportunity and that's your start, you know?
Wow, it's messed up. Do you follow rankings? Do you believe in the rankings that you see, or have you ever seen a rankings from a year and you're like, that player is definitely not as good as they think he is?
Rankings serve a purpose. But I'll put it this way. My thesis, I got my master's at Marquette in leadership studies. My thesis, a part of it, a third of my thesis was disproving rankings, saying that rankings have no correlation on the success of players after high school. And I measured success in like 3 different ways, and did the correlation coefficients and took the stats classes and all that. And lo and behold, guess what? There is literally 0 correlation between what you're ranked and the success you'll have in either college or the pros. It's literally next to 0. Like, the correlation's so bad, it almost looks like a sporadic random dot chart relative to the correlation of how highly you're ranked and your success. And so do I think rankings serve a purpose? Yes. Do I look at the number next to a player, and does that affect how I'm going to recruit them? Unequivocally, no. Unequivocally, no. I don't look at the rankings. While we're recruiting players, I don't know what they're ranked. I don't talk about their rankings because I literally, according to me and my research, I've disproved it. And so why should I hold any weight in it? If you call me up and go, hey man, the number 5 ranked player in Canada just went for 50. Well, okay, I'm using him being ranked as the 5th player as some generic general intel initially, just to kind of create, okay, he's well known, there's some notoriety, there's some popularity behind him. But for a second, do I think he's the 5th best player in Canada? Oh, that's ridiculous. They're all developing, they're all growing, and there's literally a million variables that go into them making at the next level. And so what one person or a couple people think that they should be ranked in that order, does that portray what those million variables are going to do over the next few years? No, it doesn't, not in the slightest. And so it's the easiest thing for coaches to go to to add clout to kids they're recruiting. Oh, he's the so-and-so ranked player. And the hardest thing to do is, yeah, he's not ranked at all, and I don't think he'll ever be ranked. But our team's better off with him than the guy who's ranked 27th in the country. And try telling a head coach in Division I that. And they're going to look at you crazy. And, oh, no, I did my thesis on it, man. Like, look at the 27th ranked player from the last. And this is a fun one for you to do, Jaleel. And I'll help you with some logins if you need it. Just take, like, Nikhil, pick 17th. Take the 17th rank pick in the last 7 drafts. And just look at what schools they came from. Look at their path. Look at what they were ranked in high school. And just do that with the 17th pick. And I guarantee you're going to be like, whoa, 2 players that never been ranked. 1 player that was ranked 97th. Oh, there's the number 1 ranked guy who fell down to number 3 ranked guy who was the 17th. They'll have that as well. But you're going to see that more than the rankings holding true for the draft, holding true for their success at the next level.
When Nikhil was in high school, I had a document on my computer. I used to update it like every week where he was ranked in the country. And at one point he was ranked like 103rd. And then when he finished, I think that recruiting website, he was ranked 77 or something. And I'm like, this guy is, well, they don't know what they're talking about at all. And it's just foolish.
Yeah. And so here's another cool one. And you'll be able to track it because you're into the numbers of it. When an unranked player or a very low ranked player commits to a school with a lot of notoriety, like one of the top 10, 15 schools, look at that player's rankings the next week. It's crazy that their game got so much better the week before because they say, I commit to so-and-so, that the next week they got better than 100 of the best players. And they're now unranked to ranked 54th. And once you see that, which everyone has seen, then we understand what's going on at some level. There's some level of, it's kind of like bracketology. Yeah, of course, everyone's going to get almost exactly right what the brackets are an hour before the madness. Everyone is. Are we going back and checking how right they were in November and how right they were in December and how right they were in January? No one ever goes back to Lenardi and go, man, your rankings in October for the past 7 years have been horrible. Like, why should we listen to you in October? We should just listen to you an hour before when you're saying what everyone else is, like, you know what I'm saying? And nothing against him. That's his, and obviously what I'm saying has no merit on his career, but that's more or less how I see it. And that's the value I put in ranking. It's a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, but again, the people doing it, you know, kudos to you guys, and it serves a purpose, and I'm not hating on them. Just that's that's the value I give it.
Do you think that's because of the route that you were on to get to where you were, the junior college, and then
Yeah.
the amount of Canadians who were really good that didn't get as far as they were. And that's why you decided to disprove that rankings actually work.
Yeah, and then the other part was like we've been really good with mostly unranked players. So how are we like a consistent top, regardless of the name on the front of our jersey? How is our coaching staff consistently a top 20, top 30 program, regardless of where we are, and regardless of how high like Nikhil, for example, was the highest ranked recruit Buzz has signed in his career. And it's like, whoa, name the pros and name the guys that have won the old Big East Player of the Years and scoring titles and all this stuff. And it's like, Nikhil's amazing, but that's the best. And it's like, well, something's up. Who was ranking Jimmy and Jay and who were ranking these guys in high school? And like, were they wrong? Like, or did they just not see it? Do they just not care? Or is it too difficult of a metric for someone to get right, which I think it is. Like, how can someone that sees your brother play in high school know how good he was going to become relative to his career? Say they saw him play at Laurier his first 2 years. Like, you know, everyone used to laugh at your brother back then. Big, goofy, doesn't know what he's doing, can't walk straight. And, you know, he wouldn't have been ranked as high as he probably should have been. But like, so much of this is based off of your mindset, your development, your growth, and, you know, and we can't measure that. So why are we putting these numbers next to these kids that are measuring it, that are claiming to measure it? Like, you know, and so, yeah, my path is one. And then just the path of the players I coached is another reason why as well.
Well, obviously, I think I know the answer to this question. But what do you say when you see rankings of elementary school and middle school kids?
I don't care for it. I don't care for it. I don't care if your kid's the number 1 or number 80th ranked anything when they're 16, and I really don't care when they're 13. I think that's just a distraction. It's such a distraction. There's so many more important things that should be eating up that kid's time mentally, and what that kid's physically looking at. When he sees that ranking, when he hears that ranking, that changes his life forever. That changes how he works forever. That kid who, and I'm not saying every kid should grow up how Jimmy grew up or come up how he came up, but that mindset of I'm not near where I need to be to even have a chance. How do we get to that instead of how do we show the world how good he is right now? And it's just a deadly game, because when you expectation's the killer in our profession. Expectation is what kills you. And so when you set expectations really high for really young kids, that's what happens. And there's my 3-year-old. Come here, Jerome. Come here and say hi. Come here. Okay. Don't make any noise. Daddy's on an interview, okay?
What kind of student were you in school?
I didn't take school very seriously initially in high school. I was never a bad student. I was a poor reader. I had a lot of test anxiety. None of this was diagnosed or anything. Just looking back, kind of, wow, like there were so many things that I would have did to kind of help myself knowing what I know now. But didn't take it that serious, but was good enough. And then by the end of my college career, all academic teams in the conference, dean's list, all that, just kind of understood the value of it, and just knew that I was always capable, but I never understood the value of it.
Did you understand what racism was when you were growing up?
I was always made very aware, and my mom did a really good job of that. I knew it was out there. I was very culturally sound relative to just understanding the dynamic of racism, the movies, the music, the VHS tapes of speeches, just things that I got to experience. I know most kids, actually kids in our generation, we were a little more hyper aware of culture and everything around us. But yeah, I knew about it, but wasn't aware of the impact it would have on my life right now. I'd stand by that.
Have you ever been called anything when you were coaching or playing?
Yeah, numerous times. It happens. Players don't really talk about it a whole lot, but oh yeah, countless times. I've had coaches, and so I'm Afro and Indo. So my dad is Black and my mom is Indian, and that leads with a whole bunch of different complications. But I had long hair. Obviously, my hair is straighter than it is kinkier. I was constantly called a terrorist. I was constantly made fun of. N-words, obviously. Stuff threw at us at games. People yelling stuff outside of games. Few threats. It's very, very real. One of the most surreal experiences was actually I had another coach. This was while I was beginning my coaching career. A coach that had coached against me while I was in college, that to my face would refer to me as a terrorist jokingly. And the first few times I didn't know how to react to that, you know? And even the first time I heard it, I kind of chuckled, and I think I okayed it a little bit with my chuckle because I was so taken aback that someone will look at me, and when they saw me, they thought it was okay to label me that to my face and in front of other coaches. And other coaches kind of chuckled. Hey man, when you played, man, with that hair, man, yo, you were in full terrorist mode, man. You look like a terrorist out there. It's like, you know what a terrorist looks like, man? Like, are you watching? And that's what you want to say. At the time, you're not educated enough often when those encounters happen for the first time. So yeah, it happens. It happened to me. It will continue to happen. He's going to walk across again. There he goes. It'll happen to me again. And all I could do is just be better prepared, right? The next person that referred to an old picture of me or anything like that, and they're thinking terrorism, I'm going to educate them a lot better than I educated that last coach. And the education might not be as, it might be a little more forthright than that person's ready to accept. But things like that, and I think especially with all that's going on, I feel I never used to feel empowered enough to speak up on it in that moment. And because of everything going on and because of the support that I know everyone's kind of giving each other within our community, I know I could speak up on that. I know I can talk to that person to his face, where before I couldn't. Before I felt like I couldn't. And that kind of stifling hold is where so many Black professionals live, where it's like, I have 30 things I want to say that are so wrong that are being done. And I could probably say half of one. And how do I sit with those other 29 and a half things and either wait for the opportunity or present it? And now it's kind of like, no, I'm not really saying it so I could have a career. I'm saying it so that when my boys and when your daughter is growing up, I already said those things, so you don't have to say those things. I had those confrontations, just like how the people before us had to go through some physical stuff, you know, like they were physically held down. They were physically bondage. They were physically abused, as they are still being now. But yeah, our parents had to go through that. And so who are we to say, oh, we'll reap all the rewards and not have those difficult conversations or difficult encounters? But yeah, it happens. Anyone that says that looks like us, that says it doesn't, or it hasn't happened to them, is either lying or they've been extremely lucky, because to me, it's prevalent. I don't know if you're hearing the same with your interactions.
Yeah, something I'm currently working on writing is I don't know how you feel about it, is the language that sports commentators use to describe Black people, Black athletes, when they call them freaks, beasts, even the term man-child. Like, that was a term that I heard a lot growing up. And as I get older, the term man-child is a racist term, because when they put a man in front of a child, that's how you can shoot a 12-year-old like Tamir Rice. Yep. He was a man and stuff like that. And how do you feel about terms of people I've spoken to? They said that they look at it as like a term of endearment from commentators and stuff, but I look at it as racist, but not overt racism. But it's kind of overt if you think about the words that they used to call us. Like Giannis is a Greek freak and how they like obsess over the size of Kawhi Leonard's hands, and like all these things are just, I just find them odd and just problematic, but no one is really talking about it. They look at it as like oh, well, they're mentioning me and I'm the Greek freak, and accepting the names. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it hits dear to me, because I couldn't agree more, because I'm a firm believer in racism lies in the narrative. And the narrative is that Black athletes carry similar personalities, carry similar human traits outside of what they do athletically. And so two guys that could jump and rip the rim off could be two very different human beings. And we know that because we grew up with people ripping the rim off. And we know that Jamino is the goofiest guy on earth and the silliest guy on earth. But as he's ripping that rim off, what do those people that don't look like him portray him as? And so I had a coach tell me once, while we were watching Montrezl Harrell play, he said, "Man, that kid's good." Obviously, it wasn't a Black coach. He said, "Man, that kid's good, and you'd never guess it, but he's the nicest kid on earth." And I kind of looked at him like, what? I never once thought, and we've all seen him play, he is a very aggressive player. He is how you play hard. Montrezl Harrell is how you play hard. But never once in my mind did I see him, the person, and not think he could have been a great guy. I never thought he was a bad guy. I thought he played really hard. And that's what I thought, because I don't know him yet. And for the surprise to be dark-skinned, big-bodied, very aggressive, had the knots, like that's our uncle, that's our cousin, that's our dad. Like, my dad has locks, or he had locks. Like, you know, my dad's 6'6". Like, that guy could be my dad. Like, look at him. He's not far off. Like, I don't know how athletic my dad was, but if you add 15 pounds of muscle, pretty close. And so like that, they don't have that connection. And I couldn't agree more that the narrative is too relaxed. It's kind of like when the white person could say the N-word around a group, and it's a mixed group, and it's like, it's not that you're saying the N-word, it's how comfortable you are in that you feel that it's okay to say it, either because you're not educated or you think the repercussion can affect you. And so when we challenge the people who aren't overtly racist to change the narrative, like you're saying you're doing with what you're working on, that's where the money's at, in my opinion. There's a lady This is way in the past. So Royce the 5'9", who in my opinion's the best rapper on earth right now. In one of his recent albums, he makes a reference to Eric Cartman. And I'm gonna mess up the name, so I apologize for that. But he says, it's crazy how familiar Eric Cartman sounds to Sarah Bartman. And when you look at Eric Cartman and look at Sarah Bartman, and look up, Google the names, it's there. That's the narrative. The narrative is there. The first Elmer Fudd, you remember Elmer Fudd who shot the bunny? And he'll walk around, he had the big head and he has the big lips and he's dopey and he's stupid. Look it up. It's a black character. The first Elmer Fudd was black. It's the narrative. They're creating the story. Damage is done. It's not like the last guy who put his hands up like this that we all saw that got drop kicked in the back for complying. That cop is drop kicking him in the back because he wants to keep the narrative going, right? He's not doing it to stop that guy. He's not doing it because he's frustrated because the guy got over on him. There's a narrative and there's a camera on me, and I got to keep this narrative going because this is the type of world I want to continue to live in. And so I applaud what you're doing, and I hope that the Sarah Bartman gives the viewers something to Google, but it's out there, man. It's out there, and you and I have to be careful of it too, right? And because even as you're saying it, I got to watch myself, man, because there are some slang words we use to describe guys that when you take pause and you just listen to what they're saying, there's a lot of racism behind it, you know? Thank you.
Yeah. Like I really don't like the freak of nature stuff when you describe someone who's athletic, because they don't have to be a freak of nature. They can just be athletic and leave it at that.
That's it. And how can we say that they're considerably more athletic than everyone else without using terms that keep the racist narrative going, you know? And are black athletes generally more athletic than white athletes? Absolutely. Are there black athletes within that subgroup of black athletes that are more athletic than the rest of the black athletes? Absolutely. And so how are we conveying that in a way that's flattering to that guy and his family, more so than putting him in this kind of cage that we put him in, where we can watch him? We can watch the Greek freak. Like, we could watch the freak. We could go to the zoo and watch the Greek freak. Like, you know, but if he's the most, if he's labeled the most athletic Greek person in history, or, you know, the most this in history, now we're going to enjoy this event where it's like, we get to celebrate this guy who has achieved greatness rather than going to the zoo and watching the freak. And so I couldn't agree more with you, man.
Right. To bring it back to basketball, when you were growing up, did you ever think about becoming a coach?
So my dad coached at Mary Ward when I was young, real young. And he coached a lot of those guys we're talking about, where it's like, these guys are the guys I grew up watching that were my heroes athletically, but they just never really had opportunities, kind of like how I had. And now obviously with this future generation having a few more opportunities. And I remember drawing up plays for my dad and calling them on the little whiteboard just because it was something to do and I'd see him do it. And calling the plays like Bart Simpson, or calling the plays like Homer, just whatever was in my life at the time. And this play is going to work. And so I have these moments where I remember doing things like that, but I was never the do this or have this profession type of guy. I have always been more of what kind of impact do I have on people type of guy. And is what I'm doing impactful? And for some reason, I'm drawn to that. I want to affect change in a person's life, society, whatever. But I know I want to do that. So once I'm in a position to where if I'm saying something loud enough people that I want to try to influence positively, can hear that and learn from it, then I'm in a good place. And so I don't know if I wanted to become a coach, but there were little signs when I was a kid that it could be something that I kind of liked, just because my father did it, my brother did it. And, you know, we're going to do what our parents do, you know, and we're going to do what our older siblings do.
Do you consider yourself a teacher at all? Because your father's a teacher as well.
I think being a teacher is for, especially when it's not your direct profession, it's for your students to say, or who you perceive your students to be. I would consider myself a teacher, but I'd say the people I've kind of taught should answer that question, because most of them might just see me as a coach. Most of them might see me as a teacher, but I'm trying to portray at all times, basketball is like such a small part of your life, man. So much more of what you do it defines you as a person. And I think that's where the teaching happens, because when I was their age, I literally was going to play until the end of time. Not even for like the next 10 years. I thought I would live forever and play forever. Like, you know, you just don't have that kind of, and obviously I wasn't that naive, but that was my attitude, you know? And so trying to help younger players navigate through that phase is very tricky, because every player thinks that right now. I'm going to play forever. I'm going to live forever. And it's just like, I mean, yeah, let's dream that big. And then here's the reality of what we're working in while you're dreaming that, you know? And that's, to me, that's teaching. And I think I would hope my players would kind of say I do that.
Something I always try to tell the players that I coach is don't let what you do become who you are. And that's because a lot of them focus so much on basketball that they end up saying, that's why I asked you, who are you? Like, who do you identify as? And like, they end up saying, well, I'm a basketball player. I'm this. And if that's the first thing that you say, I find, especially when you're so young, as you get older and then basketball might not be number one in your life, then you might start to have an identity crisis. That's why you need to separate what you do from who you are, and you can base who you are on things that are always going to be true. Like, I'm a son, I'm a father, I'm a brother, I'm a husband, I'm a Black man who's just trying to educate people about the past, about stuff. And you never want to have your players have an identity crisis as they get older, and they tend to find out that basketball is not number one, because Kobe Bryant, whose basketball was number one in his life for so long, suddenly one day he just said that it's not number one. And then everyone who looked up to Kobe started to, I guess, have their own identity crisis once he found love outside of other things, outside of basketball. Right. So it should never be who you are, what you do.
Right. No, yeah, and the beauty of it is it can always be broke down very simply. Like, basketball is literally a game, and you're literally playing a game, right? And that's all it is, right? It's never, no matter what you say, oh, life and this and that. Yeah, you could say all of that stuff. It's still a game, and you're playing, right? Like how my kid plays. That's what that's what we're monetizing. That's what we're revering so much. And so just having them kind of hold that perspective, like, you're playing a game right now. That's not who you are. Like, playing a game is a part of who you are. And a lot of times, if that's not poured into them, they don't know what that is when they get to us. And, you know, like, kind of just figuring out, like, just to stay on Jimmy, and, you know, I could kind of give examples from all our players, but Jimmy went from a guy who used to say he's from Houston all the time. I'm from Houston. And by the time he left us, he'd tell everyone, I'm from Tomball, Texas. And, you know, that meant something to him. And that was a step for him. Like, and he used to say that. I used to be scared to tell people I'm from Tomball, but that's who I am. I'm here because that's where I'm from. And I think that's one of those moments that what you're saying, I couldn't agree more, man. We got to define our young athletes outside of basketball. And that's coaching. That's coaching at a young level. Like, you know, like, my coaches would have conversations with me about different things outside of basketball all the time. Those are the conversations that I take, you know?
What training techniques or coaching techniques do you find like have no sense to it or just a waste of time?
I'd answer that by saying, so basketball, I'm a huge fight fan. Basketball is kind of like MMA, not boxing, but kind of like MMA. When you train MMA and you got to go to a boxing coach and do boxing, you got to go to the wrestling coach and do wrestling. You got to go to the jiu-jitsu coach and do jiu-jitsu. And then you got to go to your coach and marry all of that together. Trainers are the boxing coaches, are the wrestling coaches, are the guys that have the chairs and the tennis balls. I'm not a fan of, because I think the most important part of your game is how do you marry them all together? But who am I to tell an MMA fighter not to go train with a boxing coach? Right? If you want to become a good boxer in MMA, you better go to a boxing coach. Like, that better be where you're going. If that boxing coach has 10 elastic bands on you and you're in a machine and you're holding a thing and then now you got to punch someone and you're doing, yeah, okay. I don't like that. I don't like that. I like when you're sparring and it's controlled sparring and they're sparring, but this time, no takedowns, so all just striking. Like, just how are we marrying your game? Because the best boxer on planet Earth cannot come close to even trying to compete with an MMA fighter, just because there's so many more variables involved. And I think basketball is like that as compared to track. Track, whatever your time is, that's how good you are. Basketball, it has to be subjective. That's just the way the game's played. And we spend our all day, every day trying to objectify basketball. And there are things we can, but it's a subjective game. And so I would not encourage a whole lot of tennis balls. I think we play with basketballs. I wouldn't encourage a lot of chairs. I think we play with people. There's things I wouldn't encourage, but there's also things I like. I love the lip on the rim to make the rim smaller. I think every kid should train on that 24/7, 365. I've seen the biggest rate of improvement outside of they get mentally discouraged because they miss a little more than their peers when they're training. But I've coached a Navy SEAL, which is the coolest thing ever. And I kind of dove into that stuff a little bit, just learning. And one thing that the snipers talk about that I love: aim small, miss small. Right? If I'm shooting a gun and I'm 200 yards away and I'm trying to hit a backboard, if I aim for the backboard, I may hit it, I may miss. If I aim for the little sticker in the middle of the backboard, I'm gonna hit that backboard every time. And so that whole aim small, miss small, I think is so true. So that's one gimmicky thing that maybe it's gimmicky, maybe it's not, that I really like and utilize a lot. But yeah, I'd say some of the individual parts of training that some trainers do, I don't see it translating. I don't feel its importance, but again, each individual player needs something different, and I can't tell a player that wants to work on A, B, and C what's best for that player. If that player thinks that that's a part of that player's dream, then there's a purpose being served. So I know I didn't make some friends in the training department, but I think they're a part of the culture anyway. So I'm not taking no food out of their plate. More time sparring, more time playing basketball, more time playing outside, 1-on-1, 2-on-2, just hoop, try things. Less time beating an object that can't move with objects that you're not going to play with, and would be my urge, I guess.
What's a good basketball player to you? Because you said it's subjective. So when you're looking at a basketball game, what stands out to you like that's a good player?
Yeah. And tell me if this doesn't get it down to what you're trying to look for, but 1, 2, and 3 are all one thing: your feel for the game. Your game is not predicated on your ability. or predicated on your physical stature to a certain degree. If you're 5'0" and you can't pick up a rock, you shouldn't play basketball. Just if you're in that pool of just kind of, I'm able-bodied, capable, athletic person, the only separator is your feel. And here's the proof. Are there unathletic, uncoordinated Hall of Famers? Yes. Are there Hall of Famers that can only shoot, can't dribble or pass? Yes. Are there Hall of Famers that shoot the ball like this and dribble like this? Yes. Are there Clyde Drexlers who have never drove left in their life? Can't drive left. Go back and watch. Clyde can't drive left. Yes, Hall of Famer. And so we create this narrative of Kobe and Jordan and Hall of Fame. And it's like, there's so many people that are so different, but Larry Bird to Luka to Clyde to MJ to Cliff Robinson to pick anybody that has made it. They have a feel for the game. So when they're doing what they do, it's like, whoa, okay. Like Larry Bird, you're not going to beat a dude off the bounce ever. But this kind of high-arcing up fake you do that gets guys to raise up and the 1-2 dribble kind of fall away shots, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because you figure out a way around the things you're not good at. But if your feel's not there, if you don't have a good feel for the game, and Kobe used to say, it's like a story. Your feel's like the story. Like I could read the first play. I know it's an introduction. I know it's character development. I know it's conflict. I know it's resolution. I know it's conclusion. I know how the story of a game goes. And because of that, I could insert myself anywhere and play any role. Those players, play Jimmy at the 5, play Jimmy at the 1, play Cashius McNeilly at the 4, play him as the third guy off the bench, play him as the guy shooting every ball, play Nikhil at like whoever that you would think as a high feel person, there's no doubt in your mind that they'll do a good job because they understand how the story goes. They've read the book enough. They've studied the book enough. That's what I'm looking for. Nothing else, not your ability to do any other one thing, because you can be a Hall of Famer without that one other thing, in my opinion.
Wow. Yeah. I like that answer. And you mentioned Cashius McNeilly, your nephew. How good do you think he can be?
I think his feel's through the roof. And I think he's at this phase where don't put a ranking on him. Don't say he's the third best. Don't say he's the 5th best. Don't say he's the 70th best, because he can be any one of those. And so I think he is unbelievably fortunate in that right now he's at the point in his career where he's in control still. He has power over how much time he's going to get, how much shots he's going to shoot, how well he's going to defend, how he's going to carry himself off the floor. He's in control. That's, you and I aren't in control of our athletic career anymore, right? And most other kids aren't either. And so I know that's a kind of a generic answer, but I do think that that's very true, that because his feel is so high for the game, because he spent his whole life reading that book and studying that book of how a game should work, how a season should work, he's going to put himself somewhere within that story that makes the most sense for him. And I'm confident that it'll be somewhere that makes him have some sort of success, especially when he first starts playing. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited because, I mean, that's that's our nephew, he's like, we're going to be watching with a different lens.
How much I know this might be a stupid question, but your brother has changed my life like dramatically and like so much. How much of an impact has he had on your adult life as you became a father and a husband?
Yeah, so he, like, literally, he's the shoulder I'm standing on, right? Like, I literally have this career and my path because he gave up his career and his path to help me on mine. And so I'm going to try to follow his lead for the rest of my life and in every facet of my life. And that's the trust I have in him. So I hope my boys can grow up to be nearly as good as his boys relative to the people they are. And I think they will be because he'll be involved in their life. But how I feel relative to my brother and his impact on me is you couldn't ask someone to find someone in their life that has had a greater impact. And so that's kind of how I feel relative to the things I lean on him toward. And the beauty of my brother as kind of that, he's just a natural leader, a natural teacher. But a lot of it is very subtle in the interactions that you have, in the patience he takes, in the tone of voice he has. It's just things where it's like you're in situations and it's like, yo, how would my brother do this right now? And that's a good starting ground. And I know I'm going to probably get to a good answer, even if it's not exactly how he would do it, but he's that important. He's that influential. When he was coaching at Mother Teresa, man, how many kids did he coach, including myself, that has went on to become professionals, that has gotten his master's, that has gotten college degrees from Malvern? Like, like it's a huge feat. And I mean, the proof's in the pudding. Just look at kind of how many players are being produced from Malvern right now, like, or from that high school since he left, as far as just professionals that are, I mean, we have a group chat with our Mother Teresa high school team, and I'm just going through the names and I'm like, man, like, you got your master's, you're a teacher, you have your own design company, you're coaching, I'm coach, like, just, it's like, whoa, we're like, and that's Jay, that's his tutelage. We were having 1999, 2000, 2001, we were having study hall, weights, meditation sessions, guest speakers. We would go to the gym before some games and he'd say, okay, everyone keep your clothes on, don't go in the locker room. We're just going to shut the lights off, no electronics, no music, and everyone's just relaxing, no talking. And we used to sit there for about a half hour. They call that now, what do they call it? There's so many names for that now, and this, and books written on it. And you know what he did? He was like, yo, these guys just need to be in the moment right now, and just kind of, that's 1999. Like, that's 20 years ago. Like, and it's like, yeah, that's the stuff I'm still trying to do now with our guys that I still think we're ahead of. And so if we're ahead in 2020, obviously, the stuff he was doing, and a few other programs were doing similar things too. But yeah, what Jay did with that Mother Teresa team and with those kids from Malvern and in the surrounding areas, man, like, those are still the lessons I'm using now. So
yeah, I got to be around your brother, I think, like 5 days a week for like 5 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And I still use a lot of the lessons that he taught me. I don't know if he thinks that he taught me those lessons, but the meditation thing, before games, I used to just tell my players to just close their eyes and think about every single possibility about how this game can go. Get a rebound, you give up on offensive rebound, just think about it. And I got that from him as well. And even from parenting, I asked all the fathers I knew, like, what advice do they have? And they all gave me like the same generic advice, but Jay told me, make sure the first wipe is with the diaper, and then you can, like, it's just a weird piece of advice but it's such a, like, I still use it, and the first wipe is always with the diaper, and then the rest you can use with wipes.
Jaleel, you'll do that with your grandkids,
right? And I'll tell my daughter,
and he was given the same opportunity you gave me and everyone else you've talked to. Like, what advice do you have? And that's where his brain went, because he knew that you would use that. Not it was the best advice. You know what I'm saying? That's just, it's different. It's subtle. You get it. I get it. The people that have played for him get it. The outside world doesn't get it because he never did it for the outside world. So it wasn't for them to get. That's coaching. That's when you have two of us talking about the things he was doing 22 years ago relative to his coaching techniques. I think that's where the true, that's really where you're revered, kind of in those type of stories, I think, rather than I got X amount of Division I players this year. It's like, nah, man, how many of those Division I players that you got into school will have their masters in 5 years? you better be playing that game. That's the game Jay was playing with us. He wasn't getting us to college. He was getting us through our masters and through our first issues with our wives. Like, that's what he was trying to get us through.
And the last question I have for you, so I don't want to take up too much of your time, is how do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as a forward thinker and as someone that was driven by compassion and empathy, so that every emotion I give comes from those places in any facet of my life. And I want to be remembered as someone who pushed the envelope, that here are the standards and here are where they should be. And Jamie came here for a little bit and he was a forward thinker, and everything he did was out of empathy and compassion. And there was standards that he pushed through to help the next generation. I would hope that there was some level of that, and that's a high bar to try to set, and I'm nowhere near that yet. But I think if I focus on it long enough, that hopefully one day I can be remembered as something along those lines. But yeah, I would hope it would be along those lines.
Thank you so much for your time.